Before sunrise, the palace scribe had his lamp lit and his stylus in hand, the same way he had worked every morning for 20 years. His task that morning was routine: the recording of grain receipts for the eastern storehouses, the same work the same scribes had done for 3 generations in this city. By the time the first pale light reached the Tigris through the high windows of the palace, he had perhaps 10 hours left to live. He did not know it. No one inside the walls of Nineveh did. It is the month of Ab, in the year 612 BC. Nineveh, the largest city on earth, has been under siege for 3 months. Outside the walls, the armies of Babylon and the Medes have camped in the hills and along the river. They have probed the gates. They have sent arrows over the ramparts. For 3 months, the walls have held. Nineveh had never fallen. It could not fall. At least, that was what everyone inside the walls believed. The Tigris is swollen with the late summer floods. That is not unusual. The city has survived the floods before. The scribe dips his stylus. He has no reason to believe this morning is different from any other. The city he works in was designed, by the man who built it, to be permanent. Sennacherib, king of Assyria from 705 to 681 BC, had looked at the old city of Nineveh and found it insufficient. He razed the earlier structures and built in their place what he recorded in his own royal inscriptions as the palace without rival. His engineers rerouted rivers to fill a network of canals. They raised walls rising nearly 20 meters, running nearly 8 miles around the perimeter of the city, with 18 gates cut into limestone and guarded at every hour. Sennacherib called his fortification the wall without rival. For a century, it had earned the name. What lived inside those walls was the machine that had governed the ancient Near East for 2 centuries. The Assyrian Empire had not built its dominance through negotiation. Its armies were among the most disciplined fighting forces of the ancient world, and its kings recorded their methods openly on palace walls. Enemies were impaled on stakes along the roads into conquered cities. Populations were uprooted from their homelands and resettled in distant provinces, their communities broken. The prophet Nahum, writing for one of the peoples the Assyrians had subjected, addressed the city directly in words preserved in the Hebrew Bible. City of blood, full of lies, full of plunder, never without victims. 70 years before the siege, Sennacherib had razed Babylon. 40 years before the siege, Ashurbanipal had marched Assyrian armies into Egypt. The empire had absorbed its enemies so consistently for so long that the idea of Nineveh falling had ceased to be something people seriously considered. The palace library that Ashurbanipal had filled with clay tablets had made Nineveh the most literate city on earth. It would also become, in a few hours, the thing that preserved the empire's memory after the empire had ceased to exist. But in 612 BC, it was simply a library. The scribe recording grain receipts by lamplight had no particular reason to think about what fire does to clay. The clock was already running. Nineveh just could not hear it yet. The alliance that came to break the city in 612 BC had been assembling for years. The Babylonian Chronicles, a series of cuneiform tablets now held in the British Museum, record the events that followed in terse and precise language unusual for the ancient world. According to the Chronicles, Nabopolassar of Babylon and Cyaxares, king of the Medes, had formally allied in 614 BC, sealing the agreement with a royal marriage. 2 years before the siege of Nineveh, the same coalition had sacked Ashur, the ancient religious capital of the Assyrian Empire. Cyaxares and Nabopolassar had met in the ruins of that city to confirm what they intended to do next. Sin-shar-ishkun, the Assyrian king, had watched his empire contract inward and retreated to Nineveh. By 612, his world had shrunk to the walls. he had sent appeals for relief. Some scholars believe a rump Assyrian force under a general named Ashur-uballit still held territory to the northwest, but no relief reached the capital. Whether the messengers were intercepted or the appeals were ignored, the result was the same. Nineveh stood alone. 3 months into the siege, the city had not yielded. The garrison held. The supply chains running through the canal system remained intact. Sin-shar-ishkun had survived pressure like this before. If the coalition outside had fractured, this would be a very different story. It did not fracture. The same walls that Sennacherib had built to make Nineveh invulnerable were now the boundary of a world that was running out of time. The Babylonian Chronicles record that in the month of Ab, the city fell. What opened the breach is a question scholars still discuss. The ancient Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, writing 5 centuries after the events, preserved a tradition that the Tigris flooded violently and washed away a section of the city wall, giving the besieging armies their entry point. That tradition may reflect a genuine memory of the flood season, or it may be a literary convention. The cuneiform record is terse. It says the city was taken. It says there was great slaughter. It does not specify the breach. There is a reason this story stays with people who study it. The most heavily fortified city in the ancient world fell in a single afternoon. The north wall broke. Around midday, soldiers poured through. You are the scribe. It is midday. The sound coming from the northern quarter is not what you think it is. You have heard the clash of arms before, at a distance. This is closer. This is inside the walls. What happened inside the palace in those final hours is known only in outline. The fire that took the complex was not small. Excavations of the site, beginning with Austin Henry Layard in 1845 and continued by later archaeologists, found meter-thick ash deposits across the royal quarters. The walls of the throne room had collapsed inward. The administrative wing had burned completely. Sin-shar-ishkun, king of what had been the dominant empire in the ancient world, died somewhere inside the palace that afternoon. The exact circumstances are not recorded. The Babylonian Chronicles do not describe the manner of his death. The victors did not record it. They noted the city was taken. They noted the army scattered. They noted the looting had begun. Think about that for a moment. The record that tells us the city fell does not say how the king died. The last king of Nineveh died in the ruins of his own palace, and no one who won that day thought it worth writing down. There was a library burning inside that palace. Ashurbanipal, who had ruled Nineveh from 668 to around 627 BC, had ordered his scribes to systematically copy every written work in the empire. Dispatched to temple libraries and private archives across the ancient Near East, they returned with texts covering astronomy, medicine, ritual, history, and the mythology of every civilization Assyria had absorbed. The result was a collection of more than 30,000 clay tablets stored in chambers of the palace. Among them, on 12 tablets, was the oldest surviving work of narrative literature, the story of a king named Gilgamesh, who traveled to the ends of the earth seeking the secret of immortality, and returned home carrying only the knowledge that he would die. When the palace burned, the library burned, except that it did not. Unbaked clay, exposed to sufficient heat, hardens. The same fire that ended the Assyrian Empire baked those tablets into objects that would survive 3,000 years. The archaeologists who excavated the site noted the particular quality of the preservation. The fire had been hot enough and sustained enough to do what a kiln does. The destruction of Nineveh created a time capsule. You would not call this a coincidence. It is exactly what it is. Layard found the first fragments in 1845, excavating a mound on the east bank of the Tigris near the city of Mosul. He did not know at first what he had found. The mound was called Kuyunjik. Nothing marked it as the site of the greatest city on earth. Locals farmed the soil above it. The site had been forgotten. This is the part of the story that stays with everyone who encounters it. 3 centuries after the fall, the Greek soldier Xenophon marched 10,000 men past the ruins and recorded them only as a large deserted mound. He did not know what city it had been. 3 centuries after that, Alexander the Great fought one of the decisive battles of his campaign within the same river plains. He did not know the world's greatest city had ever stood there. Nineveh was erased so thoroughly that the world forgot it had existed. By evening of that day in 612 BC, the lamp was out. The grain, records the scribe had been writing that morning, were ash. The stylus was buried under debris that would not be moved for 2.5 millennia. The Babylonian Chronicles note the month, the armies, the outcome. Among the peoples of the ancient Near East who had lived under the shadow of Assyrian rule, news of Nineveh's fall was received without grief. The prophet Nahum had addressed the city decades before it fell. His words were not a prediction so much as a verdict. The city of blood has reached its end. Among the peoples the Assyrians had broken and scattered, the silence that followed the news from Nineveh was something close to relief. The ones who did not survive that day shared one belief. The walls had held before. The walls would hold again. The walls came down in an afternoon. If you watch this channel, subscribe. Every time we return to one of these last mornings, the door stays open. And if the feeling of standing inside a doomed city on its final day is what brought you here, there is one more morning waiting. The last day of Pompeii, 79 AD, followed hour by hour from the first tremor at sunrise to the moment the sky went dark. That one is on the screen right now.